Welcome back to The Explainer. We're jumping right in today by joining our two conceptual characters, Meera and Aarav, on their absolute final metaphorical walk together. Picture this. They're sitting quietly on a terrace. Meera's holding this worn brass compass, and Aarav's got a hand-drawn map charting out interconnected financial concepts. It's the perfect setup for what we're tackling today. Because, listen, we're not just staring at isolated formulas anymore. We're actually weaving them together. We're talking about the kind of true integration that turns raw, scattered knowledge into deep, actionable wisdom.
And right off the bat, Aarav hits the nail on the head. Financial insight? It isn't just about crunching numbers in a vacuum. It requires a much broader awareness. It's a complete mindset shift, moving away from looking at finance as just pure mathematics, and instead seeing it as storytelling. Because when managers genuinely understand their data, they stop seeing digits and start seeing the narratives unfolding right behind those figures. The stories of their people, the reality of their operations, and the actual impact they're having on the world.
So, let's dive into our first major theme here, the shift to integration. We are moving entirely away from scattered facts toward a beautifully interconnected system.
Okay, so what does integration really mean in this context? Well, it means seeing the whole picture. Meera describes it perfectly. It's not just a quick summary, it is synthesis. It's finally understanding how your budgeting actively aligns with your long-term strategy. It's seeing how the valuation of your company directly informs your governance, or how your leverage ultimately dictates your risk profile. Suddenly, all those scattered puzzle pieces snap together, and they form a clear, readable pattern.
Think about it like this. Decisions about cost, capital, or control, they never happen in a vacuum. If you treat finance as just a toolbox of isolated gadgets, you're going to miss the ripple effect entirely. But when you recognize it as an interconnected system, you realize that a decision made in one tiny department echoes through the entire organization. Every single choice reverberates. And a truly insightful leader, they know how to listen to those echoes.
Let's look at how this actually plays out in the real world. Take a publishing house, for instance. When sales for a specific genre tanked, they didn't just panic and blindly slash costs. Instead, they used their financial dashboards to actually guide their editorial choices, redesigning covers and tweaking marketing based on what the numbers said about reader feedback. Or consider a cooperative that linked its cost sheets directly to its sustainability targets. When their water use suddenly spiked, they didn't just tweak the budget, they redesigned their actual processes. And then there's the school that used financial analysis to track scholarships and learning outcomes, which ultimately supported real community inclusion. In all these cases, finance became a story of care.
That's the real magic here. True integration elevates financial management from simply saving a few bucks or maximizing raw efficiency to practicing profound empathy. When you look at that cooperative reducing water usage or the school tracking inclusion, you realize that finance, when it's thoughtfully integrated, is literally a tool for empathy.
Moving right along, let's explore Section 2, Strategy as Alignment. How do these integrated numbers actually drive our choices around expansion, innovation, and resilience?
You know, it is incredibly tempting to think of strategy purely as ambition, just a grand idea of where we want to go. But as Meera wisely points out, strategy is actually alignment. It is that exact critical intersection where your grand, lofty vision slams right into your actual financial viability.
And to find that alignment, you have to ask three brutal, essential questions. What can we afford? What should we risk? And what absolutely must we protect? Those three questions form the bedrock of literally every major financial decision a leader has to make. By integrating your financial insights, you're suddenly empowered to confidently ask and actually answer those questions. That's the secret to keeping a company resilient when the tides start turning.
Let's ground this with a few more examples. Imagine a local bakery looking to expand. Instead of just guessing, they use break-even analysis and net present value, which helps them weigh future earnings against today's costs. That gave them grounded growth, not reckless expansion. Or what about a textile firm facing a huge drop in exports? Instead of immediately laying people off, they used financial ratios and scenario planning to pivot toward domestic markets. That gave them essential perspective. And a tech startup dealing with a dropping return on equity? They didn't just guess. They used a DuPont analysis to break it all apart and figure out exactly what was broken. It gave them a specific target to fix, a totally new lens, rather than forcing them to make a blind leap of faith.
Because that's the whole point, right? Grounded strategy replaces desperate knee-jerk reactions with calculated, deliberate steps forward. When the market shifts unexpectedly, a lack of integration leads to panic. But with the right strategy in place, you gain the perspective and the analytical lenses to map out your next move safely.
Okay, let's transition into Section 3, Insight through Narrative. This is probably the most human element of our whole explainer today. We're looking at how managers cultivate true insight by looking past the raw data to see the people and processes behind it.
Because honestly, real solutions are almost always found in the narrative, not hidden in some cell on a spreadsheet. Managerial insight isn't just about knowing, it's about noticing. Take a logistics manager who saw fuel costs rising, even though his delivery routes were exactly the same. The spreadsheet just barked at costs were up. But by connecting the dots, by getting out there and asking better questions, by really noticing, he discovered the real issue was inefficient truck loading patterns. The breakthrough came from humility, dialogue, and looking at the daily narrative.
And to really drive home the fact that these concepts are living, breathing parts of a business, there's this wonderful story of a cooperative leader who used human metaphors to teach finance to new members. She called working capital the breath of the business. Fixed costs, those were the foundational bones, and cash flow was the beating pulse. I mean, how brilliant is that? It instantly removes the intimidation factor and brings this profound tenderness to otherwise dry technical terms.
Think about a finance head who has to announce some really tough budget cuts. If she just stands there and recites cold data, it feels incredibly disconnecting. But if she shares the actual stories of the trade-offs, the why behind the decisions, and the shared responsibility, she brings dignity to the data. True insight isn't just technical, it's tender.
As we bring all these puzzle pieces together, we enter the final phase of Meera and Aarav's journey in Section 4, the path to stewardship.
So, as we look back over this whole journey, we realize that synthesis isn't closure, it is the continuity, where learning transforms into leadership. We've moved from the basic ledger of life, dealing with cost and control, through the structures of risk and return, up to valuation within markets, and finally arriving right here at integration and insight, which, at the end of the day, is about governance and grace. Every single concept is something you have to continuously revisit and reimagine.
And that brings us to this incredibly powerful thought. Mastering these tools isn't about becoming a human calculator. It is about becoming a responsible guardian of your organization's future. When you synthesize these elements, you aren't just blindly executing transactions anymore. You are actively stewarding a community, a vision, and a set of core values. Because true financial leadership demands both a sharp mind and an incredibly brave heart. Just like Meera whispers on that terrace, integration isn't just about connection, it's about care. And Aarav replies perfectly, noting that insight isn't just clarity, it is courage. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on as you step back into your own roles. How will you honor both the numbers and the narratives? How are you going to weave these two sides together in your own leadership journey? Are you just going to manage the data, or are you going to notice the dignity behind it? Thanks for walking through this explainer with me. Take these new lenses, apply them directly to your work, and start looking for the interconnected stories just waiting to be told.